All right, we are we are back with another episode of the Lead Up Leadership Podcast. Um, as always, I always say I'm excited, but this one I am super excited because this is somebody that I highly respect, someone that is a friend, a brother, really a peer mentor in my eyes, and yeah, he was someone in addition to Zeba, David. Um, this brother had a lot of input and insight and advice when it comes to the podcast and just seeing it to fruition. So I had to get this guy on eventually, right? So I'm happy that he made the time to do it. So give it up for my guy, Christian Landa. What's good, man? What's good?
What's popping?
What's
Yo,
popping? There he is.
I
There he is, the
appreciate that,
legend.
Renatto. That's a
Yeah.
warm introduction, bro. It means a lot coming from you too, because as you know, a shout out to the 2020 Club. Being part of
Mm-hmm.
select individuals and being part of the elect is always humbling for me to be able to be introduced by another leader. Because like little do people know, when you're being introduced by another leader, more than likely both of them have worked on something or they have
Mm-hmm.
seen each other grow. So I'm truly humbled by the introduction and being on your podcast, man. That's crazy. I'm really
Yeah.
here. It's
Yeah.
a milestone for me, man. Like I was telling you, it's exciting for me to be on a
Yeah.
Renatto. Anything Renatto Guerra, I'm
Oh, this
excited to be
guy.
a
No,
part
no,
of.
no. I
So
appreciate it,
I'm
man.
with it.
I
What's
appreciate it, man.
popping
This,
with it?
yeah, no, and I'm gonna just do a short kind of like my description about you, but I want you to share um to the people who you are, where you're from, kind of what you're about. Um, but this guy, Christian Landa, he is a wordsmith, he is a poet, he's an educator, a non-traditional educator. Um, yeah, just someone that I, again, half Peruvian. Shout out to my Peruvian, my brothers and sisters. But Christian, can you just share just a little bit about your background, where you're from? Because a lot of that experience and your background makes up who you are, right? It's not the full story, it's not the full picture, but your roots is very important to who you are today. And I know you carried that with you even today in part of your story and how you mentor other people and connect with folks. So tell me a little bit about your background, where you're from, and what you currently do now.
Yeah, most definitely. So originally from Fresno, California, born and raised. I lived in Fresno, I think the first 18 years of my life. Eventually, I would move out to Sacramento, where I currently reside. A little bit about my background. As you mentioned, I'm half Peruvian, half Mexican. So my mom is from Lima, Peru, and my dad's from Michoacan, Mexico. Growing up, father was an alcoholic. Let's just be upfront about it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Single mother, working two jobs. I'm an older brother. My sister's about 2 years younger than I am. So growing up,
Mm.
I was touted as the one who was going to make it, right? Because
Mm.
you grow up and you look at the father figures that you don't have, and you realize, man, something is lacking, and that happened quickly to me. I think the first time that it really dawned on me that I was lacking support in my life in that way, mentorship, specifically like a masculine role or a masculine character in my life, was I got accepted into a middle school out in Fresno, California. I went to Computech Middle School. And with Computech Middle School, they only accept, I believe, 3 individuals from every zip code throughout
Mm.
Fresno. So it's much like a charter school. Small middle school, it's about 400 students, I believe. But again, you have 3 or 4 individuals from every zip code, including areas within the more wealthy areas. So getting there, realizing I come from one of the most impoverished areas in Fresno, and then being with it was me and I believe 2 girls that got accepted, which is typically what we see in higher education, right? For every 3 to 4 women of color,
Mm-hmm.
1 to 2 men of color end up going to prison. So rolling with them and having gone to school with them for about, I would say, maybe 6, 7 years, then getting to Computech Middle and being surrounded by people of wealth, being surrounded by people who are much worse off than me and much
Mm-hmm.
more intelligent than I was and much more driven. I saw a constant theme around me, which was lacking,
Mm.
which was a parental guidance in the form of a man. Right, my mom, she definitely disciplined me. My mom definitely spoke highly of education. Um, but when it came to what it was to be a man, bro,
Mm-hmm.
hip hop was probably the only uh form of masculinity that I saw. And yo, we're talking hip hop in 2001, 2002. It really wasn't the
Mm.
thing to be listening to, but luckily
Yeah.
I listened to the older stuff, and the older stuff really caught on quick. But yeah, I say all that to say, like, growing up, not having a father figure, I think played a vital role in who I am right now. So in terms of my background, I think that's definitely pivotal, to understand me and who I am. Secondly, seeing the wealth gap again.
Yeah.
I saw homies with fathers I didn't have. I'm like, dang man, like I want to be able to have a Father's Day and celebrate it and not resent it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pivotal to understand also. And I think like one last thing about my background that I would mention is probably like always being aware that I had some form of leadership in me, but
Mm-hmm.
not being able to capitalize on it, not
Yeah.
being able to just hone in on it, not being
Yeah.
able to find a way to express myself through it until recently. So I would say those are the three things about my background that has led me to do the work that I do today.
That's awesome, man. And for those, I know you were talking about hip hop and music, and I'm surprised you didn't mention reading and writing, but I'm gonna just follow up because that's a big part of how I know you and how I was kind of introduced to you and how you talk about it so much. Talk to me a little bit about, why literature, why reading, why writing, why is that important to you, and how have you been able to implement that within your leadership, and why is that important to you?
And that's crazy. See, that's how I know I'm on the right podcast, because like you know me better than I know myself, man. That's crazy. I tend to do that a lot when I talk to people and I give
You
them
do.
context into who
You
I
do.
am.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm always like, I know I'm a prolific reader, and it doesn't come as second nature for me to say so. But I'll tell you this though, I'll give you a story behind it.
Let's go.
The reason I mentioned hip hop is because yo, when I was young, man, my mom, she moved to Alaska for like a whole year.
Hmm.
Yeah, I know it's crazy. Um, she went to go work in the fishing industry, chopping up fishes,
Wow.
yeah, packing them. And back in the day, like 1 year in Alaska, I think even today you get paid, right? And so at
Hmm.
that point in time, we were struggling. So she's like, I
Yeah.
have to do something.
Mm-hmm.
Went to Alaska, left me and my sister here with my cousins. Bro, it was when I tell you it was crazy, it's like a movie almost. So when we were with my cousins, I don't think it was up to them for them to really take care of us, but they really just left us to do what we wanted to do. So I'm a young kid. I was probably a fourth grader, right? Didn't
Hmm.
have no friends. Some of the neighborhood kids were cool, but I could tell they weren't really somebody I wanted to associate with. Um, and so I would go to the backyard in my cousin's house, and I would play the radio, and that's why I
Hmm.
discovered hip hop. And I was like, yo, I like this. Like I was able to mimic the rhymes. I was able to freestyle with
Hmm.
at a very young age. So I caught on to that quick. But it wasn't until like 11th grade, like the end of 11th grade, entering 12th grade, that I became a reader. So that's why
Hmm.
like that's almost fairly recent in my life. So I would say around 17, 18 years old is when I really caught on to reading. And reading was more of a way to alleviate stress. It was a way for me to reflect. Whereas hip hop, I was living vicariously through these different characters. But um, reading emphasized growth to me, which is something I didn't really get in hip hop. I get it now, especially as a performer, as an artist, as a writer, as a contributor to the genre. But reading, man, the complexities, nuances of the characters you're reading, and that's just like the surface level stuff. Once you start getting
Hmm.
into like, oh, there are people who look like me, who can
Hmm.
write like this, right? Now you're talking about pride. Now you're talking about looking into yourself and realizing that if there is harm or trauma within your life, or if
Hmm.
there is joy and love, or whatever emotions or whatever fabric of emotion you want to tackle, that's
Hmm.
already been portrayed in time. And you're going to read the deepest and most, I would say, it's almost like a secret that you're reading that these authors have left behind. Like
Hmm.
here is a place and time in which I've captured for you, right? And now I'm going to narrate that for you. And you have to question whether this is an honest portrayal of an event.
Hmm.
And yeah, man, it caught me. I mean, that, and it added to the rap. So I was like, oh, I
Yeah.
can use these words now. Okay. So it just added to what I was already doing. I've always been fascinated by stories. You know, I think stories are the most intuitive and innovative way to get to know somebody. Like before you
Mm-hmm.
tell me about your accolades, tell me your story, because that's
Mm-hmm.
going to get me to understand, okay, we're like each other or we're so different from each other that I'll either learn to love you, um, or I'm either going to learn why I can't understand you. So I'll learn
Mm-hmm.
something about me, right? And
Yeah.
looking at these authors, I mean, bro, going into English courses, being one of
Mm-hmm.
the only brown people in those courses, yeah, man, you really got to learn how to love romanticism and say, oh, I see this
Yeah.
in my own culture. Okay, let me adapt it. But again, you got to learn how to love fiction writing that you potentially have never experienced, but on some form, shape, way, or level, uh, you've seen it in your world, right?
Right.
Like I think people would look at me awkward if I said I'm a huge fan of Oscar Wilde. It's like, bro, what? Oscar Wilde? How you like Oscar? But Picture Dorian Gray is one of the first books I ever read, and then to turn around and say, oh, but I'm also a huge fan of Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I'm also a huge fan of J.D. Salinger. And it's like, how are you finding
Mm.
all these connections? But it's like they exist. You just have to
Yeah.
find them within yourself. So yeah, man. I know it's a long-winded
Yeah.
answer, but
No,
hey,
that's and I'm glad you mentioned that, and I'm glad you mentioned stories because I know not too long ago, made it might have been last year, but you actually got invited by I believe Miss Katie to go to, was it Folsom Prison?
yeah, yeah,
Folsom
Folsom Prison.
Prison to share a piece, and I want you to tell me what that experience was like. Um, from what did, how did you feel when you were there? What was the reaction when you gave the piece, after the piece? Talk to me about that experience when you went to go share your piece at the prison.
I got you. Um, yeah, man, Katie McCleary,
Shout out to Katie.
huge proponent. Yeah, shout out to Katie, huge proponent for writing. Very endearing person. Very confident. Not afraid to tell you what needs to be done in order for the movement to work. So, yo, huge shout out to Katie. Katie McCleary, definitely got much love for her. When she invited me, man, I don't know what I was getting into, to be honest. She just said, hey, I go to Folsom Prison, and I read for the prisoners, and we do poetry exercises. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
look, if anybody knows Miss Katie McCleary, it's
Mm-hmm.
like, you go to Folsom Prison? Like, you look
Right.
nothing like the individuals in this room.
Right.
But
Right.
once you get, I mean, look, she says it herself. She says her superpower is making men cry. And I know she's made me cry in the past, so I believed her.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I already have full confidence in going with her. So she invites me, man. When I tell you you step on Folsom Prison, and like keep in mind, like I visited my dad in prison, so it wasn't the first time I was exposed to a prison. But I'm looking at Folsom Prison from the outside, and it looks archaic. It looks antiquated. I'm like, it's no way this prison is still nah. Somebody will break through these walls. There's no way, bro. As soon as you step in there,
Yeah.
right, you're looking at scenes from some of the most hood movies of all time, right, that have used
Mm.
Folsom Prison. So I'm looking at the top like prison cells, the different levels of it. I'm looking at individuals that look like me, could damn near be my brother or my dad, right, in a
Mm.
prison uniform. But I'm walking in there with a black button up, my hair slicked back. But there was a commonality there. There was like an
Yeah.
understanding, like I'm here as a guest, but I'm in your home, right?
Mm.
Look, man, when I shared my poetry with them, Miss Katie, she said, I want you guys to write a poem right now if you were inspired by what you just heard. Renatto, when I tell you that was the most inspiring poetry session I've ever experienced, I don't think anything in my life will ever come close to that, right? It
Wow.
felt like I transcended from my physical being to a spiritual being right in that room.
Sheesh.
Yeah, man, and shout out to the inmates um that were in Folsom Prison at the time, man, to those dear souls, because they
Yeah.
were able to take a piece of my poem
Mm-hmm.
and they did their own interpretation of it. Yeah, they took like two or three lines and they would start off their poems like that, or they would
Mm-hmm.
end it with it, and I was like, oh, feeling that relationship, because you're now using my words, bro, it was the most humbling experience I ever had. I had guys coming up to me telling me like, look, man, we believe in you, but you need to put
Wow.
yourself out there. You need to
Mm-hmm.
do more of these readings. And also just knowing the type of work I do with Improve Your Tomorrow, man, they were grateful. They said, look, I
Mm-hmm.
have a son who looks just like you. If there's any
Mm.
way for you to talk to him, I would I would really want you to get in contact with them. So it was not something I deserved, but man,
Mm-hmm.
I'm more than grateful that God put me in a room like that, because I really feel
Mm-hmm.
like I came full circle from avoiding going to prison, looking at my
Mm-hmm.
dad being in prison, now performing in a prison, but feeling the most liberated I had ever felt by my own words and that experience. The
Yeah.
irony there and the transcendence there it was unreal.
Man, that's yeah, I can't even imagine what kind of feeling that is. Like the how you're describing that, man, is an experience. And super, I mean, proud to say that I know you and that, that you were able to have that experience for yourself, because I could tell that even now. I know you mentioned off camera, like that you have shared more pieces, right? And I guess what I want to ask now is, for those that might have that same feeling where they know they should either put themselves out or kind of tap in more into their gifts or kind of skills that they feel like, man, I'm not sure if I can step out, or I don't feel like it's the right time. Like, talked about, like, what's your process, or even where you're at right now as you kind of putting yourself out there more. What's going through your mind, and what has encouraged you recently as of late to put yourself out there now to write more and to share those pieces, when before you really weren't doing that. I know you have some archives, but now you're really stepping out. So talk to me about that.
Yeah, man, you spot on. Yeah, that's crazy that you even noticed that. It's not too crazy because again, you like family, so I'm already knowing that you kind of see me move and move and move because I
Hmm.
admire you the same way. But back in the day when I was doing it, I was more so focused on the raps. I did have some poetry that I would write here and there, but I just felt like it was an extension of the hip hop thing I was into. But I never actually looked at it as an art form. I looked at it more as
Hmm.
a sharpening the sword. I was like,
Hmm.
okay, I got this in my back pocket in case this rap thing doesn't work out. Um, I think years later, Sacramento definitely had a lot to do with it. I mean,
Hmm.
you talking about you got the David Wilsons, the Anthony Zebas, the Renatto Guerras. Yeah, man, it's crazy. Like you see entrepreneurs
Yeah.
and they take their skills and they
Hmm.
sharpen it and sharpen it, and to the point where it's like, yo, how do you not notice the gift that this man has?
Hmm.
It's almost disrespectful to say that you were unaware that this
Hmm.
man was gifted in this area. And I think that's what kind of prompted me more so recently looking at it like, look, this is a spiritual gift and it's not for me to decide whether I want to share it or not.
Hmm.
But I think before that, for those that don't know, so my girlfriend Jasmine, she dances Aztec, right?
Hmm.
And just being around that kind of spirit, being around those practices, right? When they dance, they're not doing it for them. They're not doing it so that they can say, I'm a better dancer than you, or look at the way that I
Hmm.
step, which is what
That's
I was
good.
used to. I mean, I came
Right.
from a
Right.
dancing background. Like I used to dance in competitions here in Fresno, right? That was my thing. Yeah, so I was like, okay, this is just an extension of that. So who are we
Hmm.
sacrificing today?
Right.
Completely wrong. Not how it worked, right?
Hmm.
Um, so I would go see her dance, and for them it was really an exaltation of their ancestors, right?
Hmm.
So it was really thanks to her and her family and the people around them that I started realizing, oh, this is a way for you to praise and thank your ancestors and be grateful. So
Right.
as of late, just knowing and humbling myself and realizing, look, you got a gift, right? You got a gift of
Hmm.
gab. You're a wordsmith, but for you to do it simply for monetary gain or to become popular among other wordsmiths, is that really, I say, is that really the best use of your gift? And I started realizing that it wasn't. It wasn't until
Hmm.
I would give myself up, literally would say, yo, let me bring the ancestors into the room, pray on it,
Hmm.
light up some copal, and really start asking the ancestors,
Yeah.
use me as a channel so I can
Yeah.
transcend your words. That I was
Yeah.
like, okay, this just comes to me now. You know, part of it, what I would tell aspiring poets and artists in general is definitely spiritual. So definitely encompass that in any way that you can, activate
Mm-hmm.
that. But yeah, the second part is discipline, right?
Mm.
If you're not writing, the spirits can only help you so much because
Hmm.
you really don't deserve it. You're not showing
Yeah.
that you actually want it. And I think anybody
Yeah.
who's on your podcast would definitely understand that. You're not
Yeah.
a leader if you're not showing that. So
Mm.
that's what I would tell uh, those coming up. You know,
Yeah.
how I say, access your spirituality, and it'll
Mm-hmm.
access you in turn.
Yeah. And I love that how you're responding to this because that's kind of showing a little bit more of how you operate, right? And I'm pivoting now more to kind of like the work side and what you do and what we do together. Um, a lot of us, how we see you, right? You're straight to the point. You're cutthroat. You're blunt, right? Your team members know that. But that's your leadership style, and I love it. I mean, that's what makes you you. So I want you to talk about where does that come from? Where does that cutthroat? I know I don't want to give too much. I know you had some time at the DMV for a couple years, but talk to me about your leadership style and where does that come from and how have you grown in your leadership style?
Right. That's crazy. You mentioned the DMV. Shout out to the DMV. You know, the cutthroat actually doesn't come from the DMV.
Hmm.
Weirdly enough, you would think it would. I actually was much more timid when I worked at the DMV.
Interesting.
But I'll
Okay.
get into that. I think the cutthroat, man, you know, because I know that I have a young man's life in my hand.
Hmm.
Uh, I know that, look, man, a lot can happen in 10 minutes,
Yeah.
right? So I've had calls where a kid's about to make a decision that's going to alter his life, and it takes 30 seconds.
Hmm.
So now I'm looking at myself like I have to be very critical because
Yeah.
I decided to take this young man's life and say, you can do better. I decided to take this young man's life and say, let's make a change for the better, but I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
show you how to do it. Well, you really
Right.
can't take your time showing another individual how to
Mm-hmm.
make a better decision for themselves, right?
Right.
So I think that's where the cutthroat comes from. When I talk to to my colleagues, and they know it's all out of love at the end of the day, and I respect if they're cutthroat with me because it means that I'm slacking in an area. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
cutthroat with you because I expect you to be cutthroat with me.
Right.
Um, and I didn't find that anywhere else I was working, man. Even at the DMV, it never felt like there was pressure on me to bring something to a client or to a customer, right? I worked in sales all my life. I worked at the DMV, Sears, Sunglass Hut, anywhere you can imagine, Home
Oh
Depot.
wow. Okay.
Yeah. Um, but I've never felt pressured to say, I want to make sure the client is happy. I never understood that, right? I mean,
Mm.
the client has so many needs that I really can't, I'm trying to give you the best service that I can give you.
Yeah.
But when you mentor a young man, he
Yeah.
doesn't know what he needs. And if you're not working to provide him context, which is a 24-hour, 7-day thing, you got to
Yeah.
continuously provide him context. How can you expect him to grow? So I think that's where the cutthroat comes from, man. I'm always thinking, what if, right? And
Yeah.
that comes from an insecurity. When I took my saboteur test, I
Mm.
think it said like you're a controller, and part
Mm.
of the insecurity with that is you're expecting people to fail at the task that you give them. So I think
Mm.
partially my saboteur test forces me to say, what if this kid doesn't do this? What if this kid doesn't do this? So I'm like, yo, we don't got no time to waste. We got to be on him. We got to make sure.
Yeah.
But the other side of me is like, what if he makes a fatal decision within these next 30 seconds that I could have
Yeah.
prevented by giving him a phone call when I was
Mm.
scheduled to do so?
Yeah.
So I think that's where the cutthroat comes from. It's a mix of both. Plus, you know, growing up broke, being poor, it's like I got to use my yo, I can't, I got to provide for my family somehow, some
Yeah.
way. So you know, the best way for me is not to beat around the bush about it. Let's just get to what we need to get to now, so we
Yeah.
can work through the problems later.
Yeah. That's dope, man. I didn't know you were in sales for so long, man. It seems like you had a lot of different jobs to get to this point, man. So I'm learning. I'm learning as we're talking, man. So this is amazing. Um, I'm curious, in your position. as a leader, right? Leading program, team members, students. Um, in these past couple of years, remind me, is this your third, fourth year with the organization?
It's my third year.
Third year, right? So talk to me about, you know, if you can, I'm gonna put you on the spot here, but what has been one of the biggest leadership lessons that you have learned? It could be something recently or something that you learned early on. And what is something that you are, I love two-part questions. What is something that you are striving to grow in, you know, as you're entering this next year um, for the school?
Can you repeat the first part of your question again,
Yeah,
please?
yeah, yeah. First part is, what is a leadership lesson that you've learned either recently or early on within your current role? And what is something you're striving to grow in more this year, in this new school year?
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah, the leadership lesson. Woo.
yeah, yeah, man.
That's a heavy. And I like it though. That's a heavy one. I think the leadership lesson that I've learned, just seeing different people move in different ways in this organization specifically, is not being afraid to take a risk. I
Mm,
think that's been one of the biggest challenges for me as a person. Because like I told you right now, man, I'm afraid to not be in control of something, right?
mm,
And it's not necessarily that I'm gonna take the safe route. I'm not really a person to say, yo, if it's safe, let's go with it. I'm the type of person to say, if it's secure, let's take all the risk we can so that we can
ah,
grow from
okay.
it. Yeah,
I
and,
like
and
that.
that's one of the things that separates me from a lot of individuals. But what I've learned here is that whether or not it's secure, let's take the risk anyway. And whatever comes out of it, let's develop it even more. And whatever didn't work, let's try something else. But what
That's
we
good.
can't do is not try. So I think as in leadership skills, working through IYT specifically, you got to take risk in order to see what's working, what's not working, and to see what everybody else is doing. If you don't take those risks, people will not open those doors for you.
Yeah.
So I've learned that a lot. Definitely have seen you do it. Definitely have seen the admin staff at IYT take risk, and I've seen our students take risk when they're asked to come to an event, and it's like this is your first time. They're gonna do public speaking. They don't know what public speaking is about. They take a risk, and multiple doors open up at the same time.
Yeah.
Um, in terms of what I want to grow on, what I want to learn moving forward, man. Recently took the Deloitte Business Chemistry test,
Mm,
um, and it said that I think it was man, I forgot what it was, but somebody who takes care of people.
mm,
I don't know what that was, man, but it basically you're like a nurturer, right? You're making sure you protect others, right?
yeah.
But what I noticed and what people thought I was going to be was a pioneer. Everyone kept telling me, "Oh, you're going to be a pioneer. You're going to be a pioneer." And when I got my results and it said you were a nurturer or somebody who protects others and you weren't a pioneer, I started reading it and I was like, "Oh, a pioneer is somebody who just goes for it. A pioneer is
Mm,
somebody who says, I have an idea, I'm going to execute. A pioneer is somebody who says, let's do damage control after the fact, right?"
mm,
And it's funny because I always tell people, don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness. But
yeah.
yet I'm reluctant to be that driver in my own life. So right
Mm,
now, I'm really starting to learn like, dang man, how can I just like for example, when we first teamed up with the AmeriCorps, right? And then they were like, who's gonna be the person to take it over? And I was like, yo, that's crazy. How much money is involved? How many people on the team?
yeah.
And there goes Renatto Guerra. I said, bro, what? That's crazy. And that's what I mean. Like,
Yeah.
and when I see people like that, I'm like, dang, they're a driver. They
Mm,
already know what the vision kind of looks like. But I guarantee you they're gonna know what it looks like tomorrow once they
right.
have all of the details in their head. And that's
Right.
not something I'm good at. And I'm trying to get there, even in my own art, just not being a perfectionist, but saying, okay, this is what the
Yeah.
vision looks like. I don't know what the pieces or yeah, I don't know how many pieces are involved, but let's just
Hmm.
go for it. And the pieces will
Yeah.
fall into place as they come through. So that's what I'm trying to work on currently. So we'll see where we're at in a few years with that.
Yeah. And that's good. I love that you're talking about even just in a few years, in these last few years, whether it's like been a decade, um, knowing what you know now, um, and there's so much more to learn, but just up to this point in time, and you had an opportunity to tell your younger self, right? Maybe the 18-year-old Christian Landa, or that just 18-year-old young person that's either about to like start a new phase of life, right? Whether it's school or getting a job or a combination of both or something, right? There's another level of responsibilities. Knowing what you know now, what are you telling this person? What are you telling your younger self? What advice would you give to that person?
Whew.
Come on with it. Get that fire going.
Man, I think about this question all the time, and I always like, I go into my sci-fi
Of
place, and I'm like,
course, of
man, I
course.
can't wait until I'm in front of my young self one day.
Yeah,
And I'm like, what? Did I just travel back in time and I get to talk to you now? So
yeah.
I always think about this question, but I think what I would tell my younger self is share your passions. Um, don't be reluctant to tell everybody around you that you love this one thing, and then
Hmm.
demonstrate how you go and show your love for it, right? Because with showing your passion, people are going to be excited for you.
Hmm.
People are going to want to help you achieve. There will be other leaders around you that could depend on you because they know that you'll die for what you're passionate about,
Hmm.
which is what I understand now. It wasn't until I started for working with IYT that I was like, oh, I can show my passion for something like this, and people will corral me and say, yo, don't be shy about that. Go for that
Right.
goal. You have this talent. Where when I was younger, man, if you knew I could rap, if you knew I could dance, it's because you were at the right place at the right time. And I wasn't
Yeah.
shy to show it. But what I was shy about, for example, is talking about my love for reading. I would talk about it only to certain people, but I wish
Yeah.
I would have went around and talked to the Renatto Guerras in my school and be like, yo, I read this novel. You need to read this. And talk to my teachers and said, I really enjoy this novel. What can you tell me about it? Because I think
Hmm.
they would have pointed me in the right direction, and they would have allowed me to meet the right people that I'm meeting currently.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that I came to that conclusion on my own. But yeah, that's what I would
Yeah.
tell my younger self, man, is share your passions and share them out loud.
That's awesome, man. Share your passions and share them out loud. That's great advice, man. And as we kind of just wrap up, this is something I've started to implement at the end of each episode. Is asking the people that I talk to, what is a resource, whether it's like a book, a podcast, a movie. What is a resource that has helped you recently, or has helped you get to where you are today?
I got you. Uh, Man, if you were to have asked me this question a couple of months ago, I probably would have said like this book, this song, and I definitely have those select things that I go to in certain times, and certain people end up getting that copy of that book, or they end up getting the link to that song. But what I'm gonna tell you right now, based on where I've been in my life recently, is journaling. Man,
Hmm.
journal, be an archivist in your own way, right? Journal your life, journal your thoughts, journal your intentions, just journal. There's something about journaling, something about seeing your thoughts on paper, something about having that black and white in front of you that
Hmm.
makes you say, okay, I'm growing. Okay, I'm lacking something, because it's not always going to be a good journal session. Sometimes you
Right.
just journal because you want to ensure that you're doing something proactive in your life. But you will get to that point in your journaling where you're
Hmm.
going to be forced to say, why and how have I grown to become this person I am today, whether
Hmm.
that's good or bad. And that's in that journal, and you got to reflect on it. So I would say journaling is
Yeah.
definitely the way to go. It's been the most healthiest for me. The people who I've put on in my life have also said, look, journaling has changed my life.
Hmm.
Specifically, my girlfriend Jasmine, she inspires me to journal. She journals probably 4 or 5 times a day, and she
Wow.
has said I become physically ill when I don't journal. So I'm trying to get
Wow.
to that point, but I would say journaling is
Yeah.
what I recommend everybody do. And I don't care if it's 5 minutes a day. I don't care if it's
Hmm.
15. I don't care if it's an hour. But there's something liberating and about journaling. It almost feels like you can breathe again.
Yep. You heard it right there from the wordsmith himself, journaling. And I would agree, journaling has helped me even recently. a few minutes in the morning, sometimes at night, just to get some thoughts, you know. And sometimes I start writing things that I wasn't initially going to be writing about because things just start flowing. And I love that it just goes a totally different direction. And I just kind of go off from there, just let it go, let the hand write. So definitely journaling. And last thing, I know you're not on social media. You're one of the very few individuals, probably the only one that doesn't have any social media. But that's high respect, high respect. But what can we look forward to? You know, whether it's different projects or what are you working on that you're hoping to kind of release pretty soon, or what's cooking up, man? What do you got next for us?
Yeah, man. Yeah, social media not my thing, but again, with the whole like positioning myself to be more of a driver than just always being the protector or the nurturer is actually putting my gift out there, man, and just letting people know that I'm a poet for hire, right? I'm
Mm,
somebody that wants to create and collaborate with other artists because I feel like that's how I get my that's how I thrive on life. Is seeing other people's perspectives, but not just artists, right? Educators, how I say, engineers, dentists, anybody who says this is my take on life and I want to collaborate on that with you. That's what I'm looking forward to. So I think in the near future, man, definitely working on an album, definitely working on a
dope.
collection of poetry.
Awesome.
Definitely working on research papers. I'm an archivist by nature, so I'm always trying to collect all these dope peer review articles.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely putting a book together and then really trying to collaborate with my extended family, with
Mm-hmm.
you, with the 2020 club, with the individuals in my life that I know we can start making these dope, unique projects and
Yeah.
really demonstrate to the world how far we've come and then put them in a circle where they can express themselves also.
Mm-hmm.
So in the future, man, I'm definitely going to end up being on social media because I think that really is the way of the world now.
Yeah.
But as it stands, I like my privacy. So
Yep. I
you
hear
get it
you.
when you, hey, but I will say this though, somehow, some way, I'm gonna end up making a small little 5 page, I don't know what it's called,
Mm-hmm.
it's like a makeshift poetry book. I'm gonna
Okay.
pass them out throughout the city. So you might
There
get
you go.
yourself one. It'll have my signature. And hopefully one day that's worth
Yeah.
something to somebody.
There you
But
go.
I'm gonna
There
just
you
say
go.
moving forward, I definitely got a gift and I gotta start acknowledging that. But you know, all praise due to the man above and to my ancestors for even giving me an ability to write and speak the way I do. And I hope they continue to channel that forth through me and do it for the people.
Man. Woo! Sacramento, you heard it here. Look out for this future makeshift poetry by Christian Landa. Remember that name. This is a legendary name that must not be forgotten. Poet for hire. Man, I'm so excited to not only potentially be a part of some of these things with you, but to see the progression and hopefully catch you on a future episode where we can just talk about all the things you're talking about here and possibly even more, man. So I'm super proud to call you a friend, a brother, a peer mentor. So much love for you, so much respect. And yeah, this was the Lead Up Leadership Podcast. We'll catch you on the next one. Peace.
Peace.